Welcome into College Corner. It is that time of the year. March Madness is here. The bracket is here. The NCAA tournament. We're going to be breaking down the entire bracket with my picks, predictions, strategy as well when it comes to predicting the bracket, predicting your ultimate champion. And as well, if you guys enjoy the video, be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel as well if you enjoyed. We'll have tons of content around college basketball and the NCAA tournament this week, all throughout the tournament as well with our betting picks. And don't forget, if you're watching this video and you watched us last year, we had Kansas to win it. Let us know in the comments if we helped you win your bracket pool last year. Hopefully we can do that again and find you the winner of this year's tournament. If you guys are looking to make any picks on the game, bets on the games, I know we will here. We're going to be live on Twitch, sweating out a ton of these games. DraftKings as well. Massachusetts just launched legalized sports betting online this past week. If you go sign up at DraftKings, you deposit $5, you bet just $5, you're going to get $150 in bet credits. So for all of you guys just getting an introduction to sports betting, DraftKings is the place to go. But for others, maybe if you're a little bit more experienced, looking for a bigger offer, you can go to BetMGM. I'll include that link as well down below. $1,000 first bet at BetMGM. So make sure you go sign up with those links that are down below, both in the description, and I'll pin them in the comments. And without further ado, let's get to this bracket. Okay, let's start in the South. We got Alabama as the #1 seed in this side of the bracket. A matchup here. We got a play-in the first four between Texas A&M Corpus Christi and Southeastern Missouri State. Southeastern Missouri State made a huge run in their conference tournament to be able to make it here. Definitely not a team that I would be looking out for very much for this Alabama team. Corpus Christi isn't a team that I think they'll be the ones to make it out of this part of the bracket and can give Bama some trouble. Bama's a team that if you want to be able to beat them, you got to be able to get to the free throw line, compete on the glass, be able to play with some pace. Bama's very, very fast, but as well be able to stop the three and have a decent three-point defense. Corpus Christi does both of those things. Decent three-point defense, rebound decently well offensively, but ultimately I don't think this team really has the firepower to be able to keep up. I don't see Alabama having much of a problem to be able to get out of this side of the bracket. So for me, not a lot to discuss. I think this team's moving on. Now we got the 8-9 game between Maryland and West Virginia. I was very surprised to see West Virginia making it to the tournament. This matchup with Maryland is one I don't really see a lot of advantages for them. They're a team that gets to the free throw line quite a bit, but themselves struggle to keep teams off the line. Maryland's been a pretty good defense this season as well, a top 30 defense in the country. Great at keeping teams off the line. Good on the glass, especially forcing some turnovers as well, which is great. And for West Virginia, kind of a struggling defense this season. If they're not getting to the line, their defensive side of the ball has not been great. 194th in two-point defense. It's a Maryland team that likes to play inside, get to the free throw line. I think they have a lot of advantages here. I would definitely have them moving on to play Alabama in the second round. Moving to our 5-12 game. This is a very popular spot for a lot of people to be looking to a team to be able to pull off an upset the 12 seed over the 5 seed. Very popular. We've got Charleston here with San Diego State. Charleston is a very, very high volume three-point shooting team. So that's something you need to know. If you're going to be able to beat this Charleston team, you've got to be able to defend from three. San Diego State just so happens to be one of the best three-point defenses in the country. Opponents shooting less than 30% this year. Matt Bradley has been a terrific player. He's a transfer from Cal. It's been at San Diego State for a little bit. Lamont Butler as well. This team has really struggled in tournament play. In the NCAA tournament, the Mountain West has not been good. I think they've only won, made it out of the round of 64 once, and it was Nevada in 2018, the last 9 years. This is the perfect matchup in my mind for San Diego State. This Charleston team is very reliant on scoring from three. 47% of their shots are from beyond the arc. That is 9th in the country. Played a good pace too. They're pretty fast, efficient team. This is a scary, scary team for a lot of programs. They got a lot of different guys they go to. There's over 5 players averaging double digits scoring wise. But I do think San Diego State is in a position here with how good their defense has been this season. We saw it against Utah State to close out and win the Mountain West Championship. This is a team, perfect matchup for San Diego State to be able to finally get over the hump here and make it to the round of 32. We've got Virginia and Furman. Furman is a very, in my mind, scary team for a lot of teams, for a lot of opponents in the country here, and they're in that 4-12 game, the 4-13 game here. Virginia is also playing without Ben Vanderplas, which is a big piece of their offense, especially up front. And for Furman, Jalen Slauson, Mike Bothwell, two of their bigger scorers here. This is another team that likes to take a lot of threes. 46% of their shots come from deep. So for Virginia, got to be able to defend the three. And quite frankly, they haven't really been that good. Opponents are shooting 34% from three, 178th in the country. This is a Virginia team that is very, very much reliant on a great defense, but a not so good offense. And they're at a slow pace. They're a team, like a lot of people know, like to play very slow. And if you're playing a team like Furman, who can get really hot from deep and play at a really high volume, that can be tough in a slow pace game if you're not efficient, not able to keep up. And like I mentioned, this is a Furman team that's great offensively. They're not incredibly good defensively, but they take care of the ball. They defend on the defensive glass. They're 115th in the country. Good there. So I actually think Furman in a matchup with Virginia, missing Ben Vanderplas, this is a matchup that I actually think we could see them come away with. So I'm taking Furman to make it out in our first upset here. When I first got a look at the bracket, this was a matchup, Creighton and NC State, that I was very, very bothered because I do have a future on Creighton to win the whole thing. They've been struggling a little bit lately. A matchup with NC State is one that's pretty tough considering how they finished out the season. NC State being one of those teams that was on the bubble, ended up getting into the tourney. Creighton is a team that likes to play from the perimeter quite a bit. They've got a transfer, Baylor Shireman, you might remember from South Dakota State last year, transferred to Creighton. Ryan Kalkbrenner's the defending Defensive Player of the Year in the Big East. So they're a great interior defense that likes to score from three. I do think for Creighton, this is a tough matchup because NC State's actually a pretty damn good three-point defense, 77th in the country in three-point defense. But the one thing that I think has me leaning towards Creighton is, again, Kalkbrenner being that terrific defender on the interior. NC State likes to score inside, but again, Creighton 21st in the country in two-point defense. Very good there. And as well, I do expect them to be able to defend the glass really well on defense and limit those second chance points for Clemson or for NC State. So I like NC State. I think this is a matchup that they definitely have a good shot in, but I do like Ryan Nembhard, Trey Alexander, Baylor Shireman, and Ryan Kalkbrenner to be just good enough here to be able to get by, but I'm not so sure their tournament run will last very long. Now, Baylor, UCSB, UC Santa Barbara, the Guachos, keep an eye out for that logo and for this team in terms of what a great nickname for a college, one of my favorites in college basketball. A matchup with Baylor, though, this one honestly is fairly quick for me. If you're going to beat Baylor, you need to have a good three-point defense. They love to take the three. They're really efficient there too. LJ Cryer and crew have been very, very good offensively. So if you want to be able to beat them, you need to be able to defend the three. The Guachos, 217th in three-point defense, not going to be good enough. Now, they could have some success on the interior. That's been the problem for Baylor, is defending inside. They rank 314th in two-point defense. So you got to defend the three, score inside. That's the team we're looking for if you're going to beat Baylor. Unfortunately for the Guachos, I don't think that's them. So Baylor moving on. Missouri, Utah State. One of my favorite games in the round of 64. Maybe my complete favorite, my number one favorite here. I love this Utah State team. They had to play well in the conference tournament to be able to get here. Stephen Ashworth has been lights out from three. He's one of the best three-point shooters in the country. 44% from three, this guy is. Incredible three-point shooter. They got a ton of talent here. Max Shulga, Taylor Funk, Sean Bairstow, Dan Aiken. The thing with this Utah State team is they don't have a lot of depth. They don't play a lot of guys. They run like a 6, at most 7-man rotation. There's not a lot of guys they go to off the bench. And for this Utah State team, I really was hoping they'd get a better matchup than this. These are two teams that don't play much of any defense. Utah State's been a great interior defense, but they haven't defended the perimeter well, and Missouri likes to score from deep as well, and they've been very efficient doing so. So how I'm breaking this of two really good offenses, not so good defenses, I do think that lack of depth is going to be a problem here for Utah State. Missouri likes to play with a ton of pace. This game is going to be fast, ton of points, a ton of possessions, and that can wear this Utah State team down. If I was looking for an upset here, I'd be looking at Utah State as someone that needs to play a team that's more reliant on scoring inside. Like in Arizona, for example, maybe there could be potential there if they were to get out of this. I am seeing from KenPom, they actually are expected to be favorites in this matchup. So if they do pull it out, I like their chances to get a little crazy here and win a couple games, but I think this Missouri team is one that's a little bit tougher to be able to take down. DeAndre Golston and crew have had a really good season above expectations. I think that continues here, so I'm taking Mizzou to move on. Last one in the South, Arizona Princeton. I haven't given this game a lot of thought to give Princeton much of a chance here. This is an Arizona team that the length that they have between Tubelis and Bale, they're both 7-footers at that forward spot. It's going to take a really, really talented mid-major team to be able to take them down. I'm definitely, if anyone's going to beat them, it's going to have to be one of these teams with a ton of talent. Just like Arizona, they've got talent across the board, and these bigs are really, really difficult to stop. Now, Princeton's got some size. There's a reason why they won the Ivy, but I don't give them much of a chance here just with the talent and length that Arizona plays with. It's just a lot to handle for some of these teams outside the major conferences. All right, moving along here. We're going to the East now, the East region. Purdue opening up with either Texas Southern or Fairleigh Dickinson. Fairleigh Dickinson didn't even actually win their conference. Merrimack won the conference tournament, but was ineligible as they made the move up to Division I. Fairleigh Dickinson is a pretty good offense. Defensively, just absolutely atrocious. Texas Southern, they're one of the worst offenses. I shouldn't say one of the worst offenses in the country. They won their conference. Probably one of the worst offenses in this tournament. Not much of a deliberation here. I'm moving Purdue on without much question. One of the toughest matchups I've had to try to figure out who I have moving on for is Memphis FAU. Been going back and forth on this one. Obviously, it's an 8-9 game, so not surprising to be tough to be able to figure out who's moving on. Memphis, coming into this tournament very, very hot with a win over Houston. They played Houston very tough all season long, but a win over Houston to win the AAC. Florida Atlantic, another team coming in very hot. They were, 31-3 on the season, high volume three-point shooting team. This is a team that's very capable of making a run. Jonell Davis, Elijah Martin, both shooting over 38% from deep this season. So they're a very tough group to be able to handle. Memphis led by Kendrick Davis. He is a dynamic scorer. Undersized guy, 6 foot, but can score from just about anywhere. He's a guy you definitely want to pay attention to and know his name because you will if this team makes any type of run. But very tough to be able to decide who I have moving on. Memphis is a very good three-point defense. And believe it or not, despite the fact that FAU is a team that likes to score from the perimeter, they've defended inside really well. They're 11th in the country in two-point defense. Opponents shooting 44.8%. The biggest thing that sticks out to me here is Memphis's issues with both turning the ball over and defensive rebounding. They're 22nd in the country in defensive rebounding, and they're 207th in turnovers. In a game this tight, where I'm having troubles on a possession-by-possession basis of who has an advantage, I'm going to take the team that can grab some extra possessions on the offensive glass and the team that takes care of the ball a little bit better. So I'll take FAU to move on here. These are two teams that match up really, really well against each other defensively. That makes it very tough to be able to take a side in this game. But for the bracket here, I'm having FAU moving on. Do you remember the Golden Eagles of Oral Roberts that took down Ohio State? What was it, 2 years ago now? Actually, I think it was 2019. But they're still just as good. They've got a matchup here with Duke, and they hold the nation's longest active winning streak. They've won 17 straight games. They have run through their conference with ease. I think this team has been getting bored throughout the season. I'm sure they're very, very excited to get a matchup like this and an opportunity like this to play a Duke team in the first round. Definitely a Duke team that's very hot. It's probably a matchup for Oral Roberts. They wish they were getting someone they felt a little better against, but Max Amos still around for this Oral Roberts team, that guy that's shooting over 38% from three, an incredible shooter, incredible scorer in college basketball. He will go down as a legend from these mid-major teams. And I think this team is prepared to make a run. You know about this Duke team, of course. It's a team that everyone's paying attention to. Everybody's watching throughout the year. They've had their struggles. They're getting hot. Kyle Filipowski and Mark Mitchell have been dynamic up front for this Duke team to close out the year. They're scoring really well on the inside, but don't sell this Oral Roberts team short. Connor Vanover, you've got your 7'5" guy in Zach Edey for Purdue. Connor Vanover, 7'5" center. This guy defends inside and keeps teams off the glass at some of the best rates in the country. His block percentage of 12.2%, fourth at the position, or fourth in the country, and his defensive rebounding rate is top 80 in the country. So this team can defend the rim. They've done it this season, and I think they can continue to do so. If you're going to beat Oral Roberts, to me, got to be able to match up with them on the three-point line. They're 201st in the country in three-point defense, but They are 38th in the country in 2-point defense. And Duke has not had good guard play this season. Jeremy Roach has had a really down year. You might remember him from last year's tournament. Hasn't been shooting well. He's shooting under 35% from 3. He hasn't been very efficient from 2 either. I think this Duke team is young, a little inexperienced. There's definitely been some turnover from last year's team, of course, as there usually is with this Duke team. And they've been a very good defense, but haven't been quite as good on offense. And I think this Oral Roberts team is in a really good position to pull off that typical 5-12 upset. So I've got Oral Roberts pulling it out over the Blue Blood. Give me the Golden Eagles making it to the round of 32. We'll keep it quick with this one here. Tennessee's got Louisiana. Tennessee lost Sakai Ziegler to injury for the rest of the season, which is a huge loss for them. Louisiana, though, not a team in my mind that's going to be able to test them. This is an elite Tennessee defense. They're first in 3-point defense, 9th in 2-point defense. And this Louisiana team has really struggled to defend the 3. Opponent shooting 36%, 284th in the country. Tennessee likes to score from the perimeter. Guy you want to look out for on this Tennessee team, Santiago Vescovi. He's been a great 3-point shooter. He's shooting 37% on the year. He is now their go-to guy, so keep an eye on him. I think this Tennessee team, though, has no problem moving on to the round of 32. Kentucky-Providence is a very, very interesting game. One of the more interesting ones in terms of 2 high-level teams matching up in the round of 64. Kentucky just, I thought they were finding something, and then they just can't beat Vanderbilt. They got 2 losses to Vanderbilt in like their last 5 games. Providence, very, very surprised how good their season's gone. I thought they were really going to see I shouldn't see a massive fall off, but at least some sort of fall off from last year. They just continued to win games that a lot of people didn't think they could. Bryce Hopkins still around. Jared Bynum still around. This is a good Providence team. This is a Kentucky team I think is finding itself. You know, we've got Oscar Tshiebwe back for another run here. I like Kentucky in this matchup. Providence is a team that wants to get to the free throw line. They just haven't been very efficient from the field in terms of the rest of these teams in this bracket. Kentucky, I think, can pose some problems with how good they are on the glass and as well just being able to score inside. Providence hasn't been a great interior defense this season or a great defense from the field. I think Kentucky has a bit of an edge here, and I like them to move on past Providence. Next up, Montana State, Kansas State. This Montana State team, very, very sneaky. They play with a ton of length. The winners of the Big Sky, Raekwon Battle and Jabril Bello, the 2 big scorers for them. Battle's been great for them this season. Kansas State had a really good year in the Big 12. I'm definitely surprised to see them as a 3 seed in this tournament. I think Montana can pose a lot of problems. They're a team that wants to score on the interior, get to the free throw line. Montana State, again, like I mentioned, has a lot of length to be able to defend, has been a good 2-point defense, 77th in the country, so can have some answers there. Not great at keeping teams off the line, but that's been a problem for Kansas State as well defensively. And Montana State's getting 25% of their points from the free throw line. That's 3rd in the country. Huge part of what they do. Kansas State, happy to let teams do that. They're 298th in opponent free throw rate. That is definitely going to be a problem. They've been really good against the 3, but not quite as good against the 2. 112th in 2-point defense. Like I mentioned, Battle and Bello want to score inside. I think Montana State is a very sneaky team, again, in another matchup here with a potential upset. I think they can pull this out. I'm not a big believer in this Kansas State team with the undersized attack of Marquise Knoll. Keontae Johnson's been great as well. Knoll's a 5'8" guard that has not been very efficient, but leads the team in usage rate this season. He's shooting 41% from 2, 34% from 3. I think Montana State just is a matchup that for Kansas State, they didn't want to see. You want to see a team that's doesn't have the ability to get to the line quite as well as this Montana State team does. So I'm going to take them to move on in an upset. Michigan State, USC. I like USC out of this one. This is a Michigan State team that I think has struggled a little bit down the stretch. USC's gotten really hot, had a good finish to the year other than the conference tournament, didn't make much of a run. These are 2 teams that want to score on the interior. USC is a really good 2-point defense. Michigan State offensively has not been very efficient from 2 this season. They're 278th in 2-point percentage, 47% they're shooting from 2. USC has struggled on the glass, which is usually the thing I look for. If you're a good rebounding team, you'll probably be able to get by this USC team. But for Michigan State, not very good on the offensive glass. Can take care of things on the defensive glass, but the big thing is being able to get in the offensive glass and take advantage of USC's poor defensive rebounding. Not really a thing here as well. Michigan State doesn't force many turnovers. I think USC is definitely the more efficient offense in my mind. So I'm going to take USC in that 7-10 matchup. Marquette, a 2 seed in the tourney here down in the bottom of the bracket. We've got Vermont. Vermont's has been a very, very good mid-major team for the last couple of years. This is another tournament appearance for them in the last, I think, when was it? Was it last year or the year before they made the tourney? Three-point shooting team. Both these teams like to rely on the three. Vermont is that mid-major, smaller school, not as much of that like 4-star, 5-star talent. I have some problems being able to see them get by here because Marquette is a poor three-point defense. That definitely is their Achilles heel. And they haven't been good in the defensive glass. But for Vermont as a three-point shooting team, they don't tend to be around the rim looking for second chance opportunities on the glass. They're not taking advantage of that. And then they're not a good three-point defense either. They're 225th in the country in three-point defense. I think Marquette gets by here. I think they're in a good spot here to be able to get by in a matchup here that they're expected to. Moving to the Midwest, Houston, Northern Kentucky. Northern Kentucky, they're Horizon League winners. I do have some questions with Houston as to the health of Marcus Sasser, their leading scorer. He went out with a groin injury in the semifinal of the AAC tournament. Match with Northern Kentucky. I don't see this Northern Kentucky team posing a lot of problems. They've been a terrible rebounding team this year, 333rd in defensive rebounding. Houston's top 4 offensive rebounding team. They'll have plenty of second chance opportunities. They're going to force some turnovers. They're an incredibly good defense, one of the best defenses in the country. Northern Kentucky made a great run in the Horizon, but I don't think this is the type of team that can pull off a win over a great defense. So give me Houston. Now moving to Iowa, Auburn. Iowa has Chris Murray, Keegan Murray's brother, still around at Iowa. They have been a hot and cold offense, one that defensively has not been very good. They're one of the more poor defenses in the Big Ten. Auburn, team that gets to the free throw line, a really, really good defense. So I think that the matchup here, when you have a team that's great offensively, poor defensively, going against a team that so offensively, Auburn's definitely not the most dynamic offense, but do have a really good defense from the field. I'll take the team with the really good defense as opposed to the one with the really good offense, because I could see Auburn having success on their side offensively and then giving Iowa some issues as a team that can really, that has been really up and down this year. So give me Auburn. Miami fans cannot be happy with the matchup they're getting here as they made their run through the ACC tournament, falling short against Duke. They got a matchup with Drake, and Drake is maybe one of the best and most complete mid-major teams. Just a really efficient team all across the board. The thing I'm looking for to be able to beat Miami, you've got to be able to get some second chance points on the glass. They're susceptible to some rebounding. They're a little bit of an undersized group, and then as well scoring inside. Like I mentioned, a little undersized. Norchard Omeyer's their bigger guy inside. He's only 6'7". Jordan Miller as well. There's a ton of talent here. They're so efficient on offense. They're top 20 in effective field goal percentage, shooting 55% from 2, 37% from 3. You've got to be able to keep up. Drake's a talented team. Tucker DeVries been great for them. This team runs deep in terms of guys that can produce for them as well. Roman Penn's been a big guy as well from the perimeter. My biggest thing here is they just don't offensive rebound well. 310th in the country. That's a problem. They definitely can score inside. I think they'll match up. I just don't see enough here that Drake's going to have to work their asses off efficiency-wise to keep up, which they could potentially do because, like I mentioned, Miami's defense hasn't been great, but this is definitely a Miami team that's really talented, more talented. And if they're going to be able to win, I needed a little bit more on the offensive glass to be able to steal some extra possessions, because this is a Miami offense that does a great job taking care of the ball. So it's kind of the only way you can grab some extra possessions. And I don't see enough here from Drake. So as tough of a game this is going to be for Miami, and one they definitely were wishing they weren't having in the round of 64, I do like them to move on. I really don't want to dismiss Sincere Carey and the Golden Flashes out of Kent State. A matchup with Indiana, though, is one that's going to be really tough. Kent State's been a terrific defense this year in the MAC. The MAC was a really good conference. I really enjoyed them, Toledo, Ball State, just Akron as well. A really quality conference from the top, at the top. But a matchup with Indiana is going to be really tough. They struggled on the defensive glass. They've been a good defense inside. Having answers for Trace Jackson Davis and Jalen Hood-Schifino is very, very tough. Jackson Davis has been a terrific player this year. He's a top 30 player in usage rate this season. He's shooting almost 60% from 2 on the interior. Just one of the most dynamic players in the country, and one that's very exciting to watch. So for Kent State, great defense, not so efficient on offense. That is my biggest issue here and point of concern. As much as this has been a great run for this team, I don't like them in a matchup with Indiana, so I do have Indiana moving on. Moving to Iowa State in a matchup with either one of Mississippi State or Pitt in a play-in game for the two of those teams. Iowa State, really well rated defensively. Haven't been terrifically good from the field, but one of them, they've forced, I think, the second most turnovers in college basketball. Offensively, like to score inside. But I do think in a matchup, I think it'll be Pitt they would get in that 6-11 game. Iowa State's been very good, like I mentioned, defensively, but offensively hasn't been the same situation. They're a team that, again, like I mentioned, forces turnovers, but does turn the ball over a fair bit and puts opponents on the free throw line at a really, really high level. Really good on the glass. I kind of think a Pitt team that gets out of here, they've been a good 2-point defense. They can get hot from the perimeter. So as much as this Iowa State team was able to make a run last season, I actually think in a matchup with potentially with Pitt here could be one where they fall. So I'm taking Pitt to move on from also the first four game, and then getting out of a matchup with Iowa State. Xavier, Kennesaw State. Kennesaw State, terrific run. The Atlantic Sun Conference, they won. They hadn't had a season above 500 in 17 seasons of Division I basketball since they made the move up in, I think it was 2005. This was their first winning season. They ended up winning the ASUN Conference. They were second in the regular season behind Liberty, beat Liberty in the conference championship game. What a story. Don't see them having a lot of answers for Xavier. Xavier is a team that wants to attack on the interior, score inside a ton. Kennesaw State, Terrell Burden, 5'10" guard. The only Division I scholarship offer he had was from Kennesaw State. Definitely a grown guy in this program that's seen all the highs and lows. Undersized team. Liberty was a team they were able to beat, is one that scores a lot from three. I think Xavier kind of bullies them inside with their size and their length. So I don't have Kennesaw State making any type of run in the NCAA tournament. Texas A&M, Penn State. I think a lot of people did not give a lot of respect to this Texas A&M team and the run they were able to make throughout this season, and given Alabama a couple of scares throughout the year, but not obviously in the SEC championship game. Now a matchup with Penn State, who made their own run in the Big Ten tournament, making it all the way to the final against Purdue. High volume 3-point shooting team led by Jalen Pickett as well, who attacks inside. Terrific, fun team to watch. Team that kind of stands around outside the arc and kind of just tosses the ball around until someone's open and pulls up a three. For Texas A&M, they're a team that wants to get to the free throw line. They can get a ton of second chance opportunities on the glass. And for Penn State, as a team that scores a ton from the perimeter, like I mentioned, just kind of a lot of standing around the arc, doesn't get a lot of second chance opportunities. A&M hasn't been that efficient offensively, but been very, very good defensively. I think that's the difference here. I like Wade Taylor, who's the big scorer for Texas A&M, to get this team to the second round. Now we've got Texas and Colgate. Colgate will be a big team I think a lot of people will talk about as a potential team to pull off an upset, especially when you wear that Texas logo. Everybody assumes that you're probably a choke artist. But for this Texas team, I don't see a lot of problems. Colgate, the conference they play in, just does not pose a lot of issues. The best teams, I think, behind them in the conference were service academies. In Army was, I think, one of the teams that gave them the best game or tightest game. And a team like Army and a team like who else is it? There's one other team, Service Academy, that's in their conference as well that I'm blanking on right now. I think it's Navy as well. Yeah, Navy. I mean, these are teams that have. I believe, don't quote me on this for sure, but I'm pretty sure for the service academies, there's certain height restrictions that you can't be above a certain height to be able to do certain things in service. So I think it's a team that's very good offensively. They've got Tucker Richardson, who's nominated for Mid-Major Player of the Year. Keegan Records, one of the best names in college basketball, still around. Great offensively. Not so good defensively. They're 231st in adjusted efficiency on the defensive end. And yes, this team took care of business in their conference and in their matchups this season. Not a lot of teams you can go to as teams that have tested them. I think in a matchup with Texas, it's just the type of thing where the talent level is so much higher at Texas than it is at Colgate. I think that kind of is an overwhelming thing. They could make some noise in the first half, but I think as this game goes on, Texas pulls away. All right, making it to the West. Kansas in a matchup with Howard. Kansas is the number one seed in this side of the bracket in the West region. I don't see a matchup with Howard being much of a problem. It's a Kansas team that's running very, very hot right now. Obviously fell to Texas in the Big 12 championship game. Again, these 116 things don't happen very, very often. It's happened a couple of times in the last, I think Virginia was the first one to do it. You got to look for a specific spot here. And for Kansas, I don't see it. This is a team that's pretty easily able to be taken down. They play well at all levels. So we'll talk a bit more about them in the round of 32. Arkansas, Illinois. Arkansas is a team that I think has the potential to make a run here. Nick Smith, they got back just over 2 or 3 weeks ago. He's going to be an NBA lottery pick. He'll be playing the NBA this time next year. Matchup with Illinois. Illinois has been a very underwhelming team in my mind. Terrence Shannon is their leading scorer. They want to take a number of threes. Matthew Mayer made the transfer from Baylor and is at Illinois. He's been their guy from deep, but they haven't been very efficient offensively. And Arkansas is a very, very good defense. I haven't been a fan of this Illinois team. They're running very cold lately, went out without a problem in the Big Ten tournament. I think they go out without much of a fight in a matchup with Arkansas. St. Mary's VCU. VCU is a team that made a big run here in the A-10, had a terrific season, kind of out of nowhere, beat Dayton in the championship game to book their ticket to the big dance. St. Mary's, though, very, very good defense. This is a VCU team that is very reliant on scoring at the free throw line, one of the highest rates in the country, 22% of their points. And for St. Mary, again, a team that defends well all across the board, really rebounds well as well. And VCU outside the top 250 in defensive rebounding and offensive rebounding, not very good either. But St. Mary's is one of the best defensive rebounding teams in the country. Another spot where second chance points are going to be tough to come by for VCU and easy to come by for St. Mary's because VCU struggling with some turnovers as well. So St. Mary's, I think, in a matchup here with a very good defense, it'll be a lot more difficult for VCU to be able to get to the line in this game. I like St. Mary's to move on here in this matchup with VCU. UConn in a matchup with a Rick Pitino-led Iona team. This is a tough matchup for UConn to start the tournament. Iona's been a really good team in conference play. Obviously, not a lot of teams, quality matchups for them, but haven't had many problems throughout the season. They're a really good three-point defense. UConn wants to score inside quite a bit, score from three quite a bit. So no-go's their big man up the middle. He kind of brings in a lot of defense inside, and he kicks it out to the guards, and they've been very good there. But Iona's 8th in the country in three-point defense, very good there. But man, UConn, the one thing that you can kind of hang your hat on with them is that they do a terrific job defensively across the board, defend the field really, really well. I think the talent gap here is really what keeps me from having Iona as the team to pull off the upset. But man, this Iona team has been playing really well this season. They could force some turnovers, which has been a problem for UConn. I could definitely see Iona holding into this game for the majority of the way. But I do think that this is another one of those spots where just talent kind of takes over. And if I'm thinking of anyone beating UConn, it's definitely a team that is a little bit better when it comes to efficiency from the field. Iona's been pretty good, but not at a really elite level. So I'm going to take UConn to move on. TCU in a matchup with either Arizona State or Nevada. This TCU team run into a little bit of troubles. Eddie Lampkin, I'm not sure if he's going to be back. He's missing for personal reasons. That'd be a tough loss for them. Arizona State, though, defensively good up front. Could pose some problems for TCU. Nevada, I'm not so sure about either. I like TCU. I think this is a really complete team. Mike Miles is one of the more exciting guards to watch in the country. So I'm taking them to move on. But I don't see it as a sure thing here, but I definitely like them to make a little bit of a run here in this tourney. Gonzaga, Grand Canyon. Honestly, I'm not going to give this game a lot of thought. Gonzaga has been one of the hottest teams in the country, maybe the hottest team in the country. Drew Timme, Julian Strother, they've been taking teams to the fucking woodshed in the last month, I would say. St. Mary's handled business in the WCC conference game, championship game. They're running really hot right now. I could see them making a run. No problem here against Grand Canyon. Northwestern, Boise State. Northwestern, a lot of the teams in the Big Ten are very, very good at home, but have some struggles on the road. Boise State, really, really good defense. Very good across the board. They're 14th in the country in adjusted efficiency defensively. Northwestern is a team that wants to score from three. Honestly, this Boise State team has answers pretty much across the board. Rebounding has been great. One thing they don't do is force many turnovers, but Northwestern already takes care of the ball really well. I think Boise State has a really good shot here. I love their defense. Northwestern is a terrific defense as well. Boise State a little bit better offensively. What I think they can find success with is at the three-point line. Marcus Shaver has been one of the team's best scorers this season, leading scorers this season. But some great three-point shooting from Max Rice and Tyson Degenhart, as well as Najee Smith. So I like Boise State in definitely a matchup that could be pretty close to a toss-up. I'm going to go with Boise State. I think this team in the Mountain West is going a little underrated, and I'm not really sold on this Northwestern team. They're just efficiency-wise, offensively, has been very, very poor. One of the sadder moments when I got the first look at the bracket was UNC Asheville, UCLA. UNC Asheville will be a fun team to see make a run. Drew Pember, he's a transfer from Tennessee. He has been a dynamic scorer. I think he was averaging maybe 25 plus points a game during the conference tournament. But Matchup with UCLA is going to be tough. That length advantage he has in those mid-major games, not going to be the same here against this elite UCLA defense. Very, very good. Asheville also struggles on the glass. Pember is just everything to this team. He's like an over 80% free throw shooter as well, as I'm an almost 7-footer. Incredibly fun guy to watch. I wish they got a better matchup. I wish they got a team that was a little bit more offensive focused than defensive focused. And that for a mid-major team looking to make an upset, it's tough to make an upset this large against a team that's so good defensively. So I got UCLA moving on. Okay, we're right into the round of 32. This is where things are getting tough. We get down to the nitty-gritty. What I like to do or what you'll typically see, I've found that you want to find a double-digit seed that makes it on through the first weekend. It's been at a very, very high rate in history that a double-digit seed moves on. So we're going to be looking for a double-digit seed to get out of the round of 32, get to the second weekend. But we're starting in the South, going back to it with Bama and Maryland. I always find that teams that play at a pretty slow pace against Alabama can kind of get run out of the building. Again, we're looking for a matchup with Alabama to be able to get to the free throw line and also force some turnovers. This is a Maryland team that doesn't do a lot of that. They don't force many turnovers. Like I said, they're very slow as well, 312th in adjusted tempo this season. This is a Bama team that's just so talented. I don't think this is a Maryland team that's going to be able to take advantage of a few of these weaker points for Bama. They're just such a good defense. Maryland on the road has also been a completely different team than they are at home. This is going to be a neutral site, of course, so I like Alabama to move on. San Diego State, Furman. So we had Furman pulling off the upset over UVA. That would be a big one on that opening week, or on the opening Thursday or Friday, whenever their matchup. San Diego State, though, going against Furman. Furman, like I mentioned, a high-volume three-point shooting team. San Diego State, the reason I had them over Charleston is they're an elite three-point defense. Below 30% opponents are shooting. Again, I've got them moving on. This will be, for the Mountain West, monumental to make it through the first weekend. I like San Diego State to finally get it done, with the benefit, of course, of a matchup with Furman in round 2. Creighton Baylor. This one for me is pretty easy. I have a problem here with this Creighton team. I had a future in on them, but if we get this matchup between Creighton and Baylor, I will be laying a good bet on Baylor to win this one. If you want to beat Baylor, you got to score inside. Creighton is not typically doing that, and Creighton's three-point defense has not been great this season. So I do think Baylor in this matchup, as the more efficient offense, especially from three, they've been so good, has the advantage here. This isn't the matchup for me that Baylor is able to be beaten, so I'm taking Baylor to move on there. Mizzou, Arizona. We talked about Mizzou. Very fast, very good offense, but the defensive side is where they struggle. Utah State is a team that I didn't think could take advantage of that. Arizona, though, with their length, with their ability to rebound, Mizzou's been a great offensive rebounding team, but also the big thing they do well is force turnovers. Arizona does a good job taking care of the ball. As much as this is a Mizzou team that's a very fun offensively, the defensive issues are going to be a problem when you play a team as complete as Arizona, so I've got Arizona moving on there. Florida Atlantic, as we had them in that win over Memphis, a matchup with Purdue. Having answers for Zach Edey is important. He's one of the most difficult to guard players in college basketball. He's 7'5". There's not a lot of teams that have answers for a 7'5" center, and FAU's one of those teams. As good as their interior defense has been, Memphis is a team that doesn't have quite the amount of length that Purdue does. Purdue also a good three-point defense. This is an FAU team that could just get unconscious from three and make that type of run we've seen from some teams. Don't think this is the matchup that we see, or the team that we see do that. I think Purdue is moving on there. Oral Roberts, Tennessee. I mentioned with Tennessee, Zakai Ziegler being out could be a problem for this team, and why I don't have a lot of confidence in being able to make a run. Oral Roberts is my double-digit seed I think can get out of the first weekend. Tennessee is a very good defense. We've talked about that. Elite defender from the field. I think it's tough to have answers for this Oral Roberts team. Axe Abus from three. We've got Vanover inside. It's tough again to have answers for the big 7-footers. And again, Tennessee offensively has not been good. So if that defense is not defending a very good, efficient three-point shooting team, I think they struggle to keep up. And again, that absence of Zakai Ziegler sticks out. I've got them moving on. Kentucky, Montana State. Montana State, we had them in the upset. This is a Kentucky team that's much better defensively, keeping teams off the line. Kentucky has a nice string of matchups here in my mind to be able to make a run in in this tournament. So I'm going with Kentucky. I have Montana State as a team that's a little bit too reliant on getting to the free throw line, and if you can keep them off of it, you're going to have a great way to be able to get past this team. So I think their run ends on the weekend, so I'm getting Kentucky moving on. USC Marquette, again, the thing with Marquette for me is you need to be able to score from three. That has been their Achilles heel. Otherwise, they're a very good team. USC has a great interior defense. We talked about that earlier, but not great from the perimeter. I'm not a huge believer in this Marquette team, but the way this bracket breaks down, I've got them moving on to the Sweet 16. Houston-Auburn. We've got a matchup here between two really, really good defenses. I expect this game to be pretty low scoring. This is where that question of Marcus Sasser, what his availability will look like next week, comes into play for me. But there's a problem with this Auburn team is as good as they are defensively, they lack efficiency offensively. And that's going to be a problem when you play a Houston team that's, again, such an elite defense. And as well, Auburn's struggling on the defensive glass. You need to be able to limit second chance points if you're not very efficient from the field. That's my biggest problem with Auburn here in that 1-9 matchup that they have. I'm taking Houston to move on in that one. Miami, Indiana. We touched on these two teams earlier. More on the Miami side. The big thing for me is being able to score in the interior if you're going to beat this Miami team. What does this Indiana team do well? With Trace Jackson-Davis and Jalen Hood-Schifino, score inside. We got a length advantage here for this Indiana team. Offensively, they do defend, and they do defend the field really well. I think they can keep up, and I think you see a huge, huge game. Player props-wise, which you can bet at DraftKings, I will be looking at Trace Jackson-Davis to go over his points, his PRAs, his rebounds, whatever it's going to be. Probably PRAs or points I'll look at. But I think this Indiana team, this is not a good matchup for Miami defensively, and I think Indiana moves on. Another one that we're getting a little crazy with here, this matchup that I have Pitt making it all the way to this second round. I do think here, Pitt in a matchup with Xavier. Xavier's a good interior scoring team, but they don't defend well from three. And if Pitt gets to this game against Xavier as the 11 seed coming out of the first four, I think they beat Xavier because, again, they've got a pretty good interior defense. That's why I had them moving on over Iowa State. But and they do take a number of threes. They like to score from the perimeter. So I'm taking, hopefully it's Pitt, but if it's Mississippi State too, we're going to get those points as well. But I have Pitt moving on in a matchup with Xavier. Okay, Texas A&M, Texas. I moved Texas A&M along because of how good they are defensively and what they can do on the glass against a Penn State team that if they are inefficient, they're not going to get many second chance points. Now they run into a more complete Texas team. My big thing here is Wade Taylor ran really cold in those last two games of the conference tournament against Bama in the final, and then who did they beat in the semi? I can't remember, but he was really poor from the field. And this team I mentioned is not very efficient shooting-wise. They get to the line, but they do not shoot well from the field. They're 246 from three. They're 242nd from two. It's all in that offensive rebounding for second chance points, forcing some turnovers, and getting to the free throw line. For Texas and playing the Longhorns, it's going to be much, much more difficult in my mind for them to be able to do that. So I think Texas is the team you want to go with here to be able to make it out of this round of 32 matchup and take Marcus Carr, Timmy Allen, if he's hopefully back for them as well. I think they move on and make it to the next weekend. I've got my first one seed going down here. Arkansas, Kansas. I'm taking Arkansas. I like the Razorbacks. I think this team is in a good position here to be able to pull out a run. And for Kansas, this is less about the head-to-head matchup, a little bit about more, very, very tough to be able to win back-to-back NCAA tournaments. I know this Kansas team has a lot of new players in their starting five, not a lot of returning production, so it's not the same team to say. But I think for Arkansas, I really like what they can do to be able to defend the field. They're a really good defense. They get Nick Smith back, like I mentioned. And one issue a little bit here for Kansas has been rebounding-wise. They're about average on both the offensive and defensive side, and then keeping teams off the free throw line haven't been great either. And Arkansas, with Anthony Black, with Nick Smith, like I mentioned, with Ricky Council, they attack the rim, get to the line, rebound well. I think here, this is yet another year where Arkansas makes it to the round of 16, or the Sweet 16. Lost in the Elite Eight last year. We'll see if they can get there, but I like them getting out of that spot there. St. Mary's, UConn. This is a great matchup in the round of 32. Would love to see this one. These are two teams I'm a huge, huge fan of. But for this St. Mary's team, my big problem with them is they have been terrible at the free throw line this year. Tight games in this tournament, in any tournament, and when it's just win and move on, that's a problem. 69% they're shooting at the line. Thing if you want to be able to beat UConn is be able to force some turnovers. they're able to force some, not at a really, really high rate this season. They're actually, they're 122nd in opponent turnover rate, which is still pretty good, but not at a really high level. And then as well, being able to defend from three. UConn likes to take a number of threes, like I mentioned. Not quite as good defending the three as they are the two. So I do like UConn to move on here. I think this game will be close, but the big thing for me and the thing that will decide it is that free throw problem for St. Mary's is the deciding factor. TCU Gonzaga. I like Gonzaga here. I mentioned earlier, this team just looks possessed right now in terms of how they've been playing over the course, how they've finished the season. Electric offense. The defense has been a problem this year, but it's looked a lot more locked in over the last couple of weeks, especially in the tournament there in the WCC. TCU is a team that has been really good defending the three, but haven't been as good defending inside. We talked about Strother and Timmy as the two big-time scorers for this Bulldogs team. They don't take a lot of threes. I think there's some problems here with TCU and their length and missing Eddie Lampkin to be able to get by an offense that's been as dynamic as Gonzaga's been over the course of the season, especially the last month. So I'm taking Gonzaga to move on over TCU. Boise State, UCLA. We've got a matchup here between two really, really good defenses. UCLA is the number one defense in adjusted efficiency from KenPom. For Boise State, they're 14th. I think Boise State can definitely pose some problems with their defense. But again, UCLA is just an incredibly talented team between Tiger Campbell and Jaime Jaquez. Jaime Jaquez is probably, I would say, the best player in college basketball this year. I want to see Boise State make a little bit more of a run than this, but I think UCLA probably should have been a 1 seed. They are a 2 seed here and getting a matchup with Boise State. I think this is one of the more complete teams in the country. We talked about them in a previous video as a future national champion and one of my favorites to be crowned national champions. I don't think their tournament ends here, so I like them over Boise State in this one. Sweet 16, going back to the South. Bama, high volume 3-point shooting team. You know, Brandon Miller's been a terrific scorer for them as is. He's going to be a future lottery pick. And it's a team that likes to take a lot of threes, and we talked about this with San Diego State, is they are a great 3-point defense. They could pose some problems. The issue for me, though, is being able to keep up offensively, efficiency-wise. This team's really good on defense. The offense needs some work. They haven't been shooting it terrifically well. If you watch that game against Utah State in the West Championship, very hard to watch. But the defense definitely poses some problems, forces turnovers as well, which has been a bit of an issue for Alabama. I could undoubtedly see this happening because of how good San Diego State is defensively and how they match up. The biggest thing for me is being able to create something offensively and be able to create enough offensively to be able to keep up with Bama's pace like we've talked about, because there's another team that plays fairly slow and for San Diego State have struggled to score on the interior. 220th in 2-point offense. Good on the glass, take care of the ball, force some turnovers, very good 3-point defense. I want to take this upset. I really do, but I've watched this Alabama team and it just seems like no matter the situation, no matter the team, they're down 10, down 12. They've come back and been able to take care of business about just about anyone the last month. I think as good as San Diego State has been defensively, not sure they have enough offensively. So I'm taking Alabama to move on there. And then we're going chalk in the South here. We've got Arizona and Baylor. I mentioned this about Baylor. You've got to be able to score inside. That is how you can beat this Baylor team. Arizona is a very complete team on the defensive end, great rebounding wise, and they are a really, really good team when it comes to scoring on the interior. We talked about Tubelis and Bayo as 2 7-footers that are very, very tantalizing scorers that are going to be tough for anyone to have answers for. I don't think Baylor has those answers. This is not a good matchup. This will be one that I definitely will be targeting from a betting perspective if we see these two teams meet. So I've got Arizona making it and moving on to the Elite Eight. The Cinderella run from Oral Roberts. Can it continue? I would love to see this matchup, Purdue and Oral Roberts, because we'd have the matchup of the 2 7-5 centers going head-to-head in Vanover and Edey. Can Oral Roberts continue this run and get to the Elite Eight, much like St. Peter's did last year? I'm not there. I'm not quite there. This team's been very, very good. Again, the competition that they've faced is obviously the question mark. And Purdue is a team with Edey that obviously could have a decent matchup in terms of length, of course, with Vanover. But Purdue defensively is one I trust a little bit more to defend. Much like Tennessee can defend against Oral Roberts really well from the field. But I do have a question here from Tennessee to be able to score. But for Purdue, I think that they're going to pose some problems here for matchup-wise for Oral Roberts. So I've got Purdue getting it done as the 1 seed. Kentucky Marquette. We talked about Marquette as a team that I don't have a lot of faith in, don't have a lot of belief in. Kentucky here, I think, is the play to get onto the Elite Eight as that 6 seed, one of those higher seeds, a 6 seed, yes, that makes a little bit of a run here, pulls out an upset. Marquette has been really bad on the glass on both ends, and I think that will be a problem against this Kentucky team with Tshiebwe. They're a very good rebounding team, both ends, especially offensively, second in offensive rebounding rate this season, so could get some second chance opportunities there. And for Marquette, they've been really poor against the 3, but still haven't been very good defending inside. I think Tshiebwe will be a problem here. And Kentucky's got a good defense. They've been good across the board defensively. The one thing they haven't done well is force turnovers, but I don't think that's the thing that'll keep them from winning this game. So I'm taking Kentucky to make the Elite Eight. Houston, Indiana. We got a matchup here between Jarris Walker and Trace Jackson Davis. I think this is one here for Indiana that I could see them hanging around in. But the one thing that gives me some pause is Indiana's work on the glass. As good as Jackson Davis has been, this team hasn't rebounded all that well. You'll need some second chance opportunities against Houston. They're just an elite defense from the field. That's my problem there. But again, the size here from Houston is that Walker's 6'8". They don't have anyone really above that length playing good minutes. So Davis could still pick up some numbers on the glass and points wise, but I trust Houston from the defensive side a little bit more here. And again, Sasser being back will be huge for this team if he is, and I like them over Indiana there. All right, the miracle run here from Pitt, I have ending. This Texas team, again, is complete, scoring at all levels. For Pitt, again, one that scores from 3. Texas, a very good 3-point defense. I think this is a matchup here where winning a couple of games, we'll still see Texas moving on there. Arkansas, UConn. This is another one of those spots here where I'm really leaning towards taking this higher seed. Arkansas is a team that's very good from 3 and gets to the free throw line and can force some turnover. Or very good defending the 3, gets to the free throw line and can force some turnovers. And we've talked about this before. UConn's problem is turning over the ball and putting teams at the line far too much. And that is what Arkansas does offensively really, really well. 26th in 3-point defense. 30% opponents are shooting. UConn will definitely pose some problems from the field for Arkansas, but Nick Smith, Anthony Black, we've talked about Ricky Council as well. I think this team can attack the free throw line, be efficient in their possessions as well, and get some extra ones when it comes to the turnover. So I love UConn, but man, they're so well respected power ratings wise, but continually come up short in some of these bigger games. I think this is one here where the run ends, and I think Arkansas is going back to the Elite Eight. UCLA Gonzaga. We've talked about Gonzaga as a team that's just run rampant through the conference to close out the year, but the defense is a problem. And again, I will take the side with for UCLA, it's a great defense and great offense, but a really good defense to be able to match up for a Gonzaga team that likes to score inside. UCLA is one of the best interior defenses in the country against a Gonzaga team that's really struggled on the defensive side. They have not had answers on defense for a lot of teams, and teams in that conference that play at a much lower level than UCLA does. That's my deciding factor. I think if a Gonzaga was matching up with maybe an Alabama they could keep up pace-wise with, a Marquette on that side of the bracket, or a Purdue, I'd give them a good chance here. UCLA is just one of those teams that's really tough to beat when it comes to their consistency night in and night out. Alabama, Arizona. We've talked about what both of these teams like to do. Alabama's been one of the best interior defenses in the country. Arizona, of course, Arizona, of course, has been fantastic with the Pac-12 win, conference win over UCLA. They're not forcing enough turnovers, though, and I need you to force some turnovers to be able to beat this Alabama team, as that has been the one thing they've struggled with this year. And again, this is an Alabama team that's just so incredibly efficient offensively, so much talent. This game should be fantastic. Alabama's, in my mind, a team that's just destined for this Final Four. So I've got them moving on over Arizona. Purdue, Kentucky, the matchup between Oscar Tshiebwe and Zach Edey. I like Kentucky. I think this Purdue team is not good at getting good enough play from their guards or anyone not named Zach Edey. This is a Kentucky team. Of course, Oscar Tshiebwe is that driving guy for them and their number one scorer. But there are other options here that I think will develop throughout this tournament as well, between Jacob Toppin, Cason Wallace, Antonio Reeves. I haven't seen enough in that spot-up shooting from these guards, from Fletcher Lawyer specifically, to have this Purdue team making it all the way to the Final Four. So Kentucky's that big team for me to be able to make it all the way to the Final Four as one of these higher seeds. Houston, Texas, another battle of Texas we have here. We had one earlier with A&M in Texas. I'm trusting Houston's defense a little bit more here. The one thing with Texas is struggled a little bit on the glass. I need those second chance opportunities for them. And again, this Houston team, when you're so good defensively and so consistent defensively, for me, it's very, very tough for you to be able to pull out an upset over them. You need some of those teams that are just so much more reliant on offense, like a Gonzaga is, to be able to upset them as a team as a lower seed. So I like Houston to move on over Texas. Arkansas, UCLA. I see this as the spot where Arkansas's run ends. Again, this is an Arkansas team that is a little bit too reliant in my mind on getting to the free throw line. UCLA is such a great defense. It's a lot tougher to do that. And Arkansas just hasn't been quite efficient enough to be able to keep up with Jaime Jaquez, Tiger Campbell, and this really consistent UCLA team. So I've got UCLA in the Final Four. All right, our Final Four: Alabama, Kentucky, Houston, UCLA. So we've got two 1 seeds, a 2 seed, and a 6 seed. Again, I believe it's in the last 20 years, something like that. At least 82% of the teams in the Final Four are top 4 seeds. So that's kind of what I have here. I've got Kentucky as that team coming out in the lower part of the bracket. Matchup with Alabama. Alabama's taking care of business in matchups with Kentucky throughout the regular season. Again, this is a Kentucky team that's been up and down. This is a potential for them, I think, the way the bracket breaks down, to be able to make a run. But man, Alabama is a tough team to match up with and a tough team to be able to beat coming into this tournament. This is a matchup where I don't see quite enough from them offensively to be able to get through in this game against them. I'm going Alabama. I like them to move on to the national championship. Houston, UCLA. Now, again, getting to this point in the tourney, this is very tough. These are we've got Alabama, Houston, and UCLA. They're all top 3 in KenPom's adjusted efficiency metric. These are usually the teams that make it to these Final Fours. I'm going UCLA. I trust a little bit more from the offense from Jaime Jaquez. Again, that Marcus Sasser question mark is still there throughout the tournament, but I still like this Houston team defensively. I think what we're looking for from UCLA is a team that's really responsible on the glass, and then as well, Houston, of course, has been a terrific defense across the board. You definitely can't sell them short there. But I do think for UCLA, the consistency across the board and being able to defend without fouling will be big here. That's one problem for Houston on the defensive side. So give me UCLA, Alabama in the national championship game. And I think I'm going to go, this is very tough. I think this matchup here is one that I lean the Alabama side. I do like, again, from Alabama, that pace they play with that really overwhelms teams. Both teams terrific defensively. I like Alabama from the offensive perspective a little bit more in the thing that gives them the edge in this one. So I'm going Alabama as my national champion. Hopefully we can repeat what we were able to do last year with Kansas as the national champion. I like Alabama. I know it's not the storybook ending a lot of people would be looking for, but man, this team is just so incredibly talented and has been all season. All right, if you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to let me know. Drop a like. We'd really, really appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel as well if you enjoyed. And join our Discord. We'll be having a bracket challenge that we'd love to get you all involved in. So I'll include the link to our Discord in the description if you guys want to check that out and join us there. But again, if you guys are looking to bet on the conference or on the NCAA tournament and any tournament games, again, those links to sign up at the sports books are down below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time.